And thank you for joining me on another episode of the Tech Exec Podcast, where I help you create teams worth leading because life's too short to lead mediocre teams. As always, I'm your host, Aviv Ben-Yosef, advisor and coach to tech execs worldwide. And the subject today is the notebook test. This is something that I've been using for a while and just happened to use it a couple of days ago. And I thought, hey, I don't think I've ever mentioned it on the podcast. Let me share it with you. So let's get right into it. The notebook test. Imagine that you open up your laptop one morning and you find out that somehow your personal notes, your personal notebook, if you like physical notebook like myself, with all the notes you take of the people you manage was somehow shared. Maybe it's a scan, maybe someone, got share access to your Notion, whatever. Now everyone on your team has read it. Exactly what you think about them. No sugarcoating, no trying to be too nice, no being politically correct. They see your thoughts about them. What is going to happen? How stressed are you right now just imagining this? Will people be very hurt? Will they actually trust you more or trust you less? How many would be surprised for the better, for the worse? This is the notebook test. Let's talk about what it teaches us about how you manage and how you can improve as a leader. First of all, if you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling, oh my God, if you just hate to imagine this thing, what it often tells us is that you tend to be overly protective of people around you. I'm going to put aside the small case where someone has to be, for example, let go or replaced, and there's a time frame within which you hide that fact because it might put the project at risk, might put the company at risk, and you have to have like a little period of time where you cannot be as fully honest as you would like to. At least I want to hope you would like to. Most of the times, we don't really have an excuse. Why are we even in this sort of situation? How did we get here? And does that even make sense? When we allow ourselves to not show people what we really think, we might think that we're helping them. We might just think we don't like being too confrontational, too direct, but a lot of the times what we end up doing is harming those exact people we think we're protecting, because without getting the real feedback they deserve, without ever really hearing what they're doing wrong or not, chances of them improving are greatly diminished. And when that's the case, you're essentially, by trying to help them, by spoiling them and cuddling them, you're setting them up to fail. You're setting up a trap for them because they will not spontaneously improve as fast as you would need to. And not being aware of the gravity of the case, this will drag on for too long until, oftentimes, you reach a point of no return. You can no longer allow things to continue being like that, and now you have to take action that's bad for them. And had you given them some feedback, maybe this could have been avoided. Even more, the notebook test tells us about you how good you are with how you're able to formalize your real opinions and thinking about stuff. Some people, when I ask this, actually don't have a fear. What they have is like this blank stare because they essentially never take the time to sit down and think, what do I really think about X? Do I think they're a good leader or not? Am I pleased with their progress or not? Are they where I would have expected? When we never take the time, we're not really leading. We're just reacting. We're in the meeting, just saying what we think we ought to say, doing probably what we think is the best thing to do. However, not having the sense to sit down and think and try to come up with our real opinions, not just being reactive in the moment, but taking a second to decide what we think is critical. And when we don't do that, we just sort of are continuously winging it. as leaders. I have a recent article about this where I say you need to write down your operating system as a leader, and I'll link to it in the show notes. But even without this becoming some sort of, heavy process, you do need to know what you're thinking about people. You need to think where you want to get them, how you want to help them, where they need to be progressing. And when we don't do that, we're, again, just hoping for the best. We're just flailing our hands and hoping things would come up as we would like them to, which is, a fat chance. After you've realized that this is something that you're not feeling good about, you need to start thinking how you can start adjusting your feedback dial a bit up so it becomes better. I have a bunch of content about that, so we're not going to cover everything about providing feedback. But what I want you to realize right now is that whenever you're cuddling, whenever you're protecting someone, be it consciously thinking, this is what I want to do, or not, you're harming their own progress. You're probably harming the entire team around them. So you're doing no one a favor. Maybe you're doing just yourself a very egoistic favor because you're avoiding confrontation for a bit longer. But you're not really helping anyone. You're not being a genuine leader. So to dial that feedback a bit up, what I recommend you to do is to right now think about that notebook. Think who's likely the person who's closest, like the diff between what they know and what you'd write down is the smallest, and maybe cover that gap because it's easy. Or if you're feeling brave this morning, I actually recommend starting, sorting the other way around. Find the person with the biggest diff and think, what sort of feedback can I start delivering there to make progress? Because that's likely the biggest issue on your team. And this is when we're working one-on-one, this is usually where I try to start. If I notice that there's someone that has a clear gap, probably there we'll get some very quick wins if we start working there, or we can avoid a big mess. Either way, it's usually where I'd like to start, unless we have a good reason not to. So right now, think about those two extremes on your team and decide about at least one you're going to start with. And if you want to be even better as a leader, try to do this exercise with yourself regularly. When you finish a meeting and you feel like, how you finish a meeting and you feel like you're angry or you're frustrated and yet you didn't really say what you were thinking, have this habit of thinking, who would be surprised to get my brain dump right now? Or have a reminder once a week as you're preparing for your one-on-ones. I hope you're preparing for them, right? Where you go through this exercise for a minute. Who would I surprise the most if I gave them my opinion this week and give it to them? It doesn't have to be harsh. It doesn't have to be, made so prickly that it hurts. But it does need to be candid. It does need to be timely. You can't wait on it for too long. And you cannot sugarcoat it too much that essentially they don't understand that they're even receiving any sort of feedback. You have to find the right balance here. And even if it's a bit harder at first, it is something that we get better at, especially if you keep thinking to yourself mentally what you're doing. This is another rep in your exercise regime in order to become a better leader. You got to put in your reps. This is actually the first episode of the podcast. It was about this. It's called the leadership muscle. And this was precisely the concept. Some things we find hard, we have to put in the reps in order to become better leaders, and very fast we improve. As you can see with any sort of exercise that you do properly with a good plan. That's it for this week. Thank you for joining me. As always, if you haven't yet, do check out my newsletter. The link is in the show notes, where you'll get every week this podcast, a video, an article, a bunch of good stuff, and it's all for free. That's it. I'll see you next week. Ciao.